just to let you know that this is indeed being recorded. All right, so I'm going to stop talking now, and I am going to hand it over to our presenting sponsor, Puget Sound Energy. And from Puget Sound Energy, I would like to welcome Tracy Turman. So Tracy, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite and including me in this session. I will note at the onset, this is not the opportunity to talk about any power outage that you experienced during our current windstorm. We're working diligently to ensure that all power is restored to all of our PSE customers in a timely and responsible fashion. So needed to get out that plug. I am honored to be the representative as PSE's presenting sponsor for this Young Professionals Development Initiative. Our engagement with the Chamber is deep and long held, and given the Young Professional Network's mission to create the next generation of business and community leaders, it's incredibly important to companies like Puget Sound Energy. Supporting opportunities to promote the learning and development of our future leaders is an absolute necessity for us in order for our company to execute its aspirational goal, which is to be a beyond net zero carbon energy company by 2045, and continue to advance our clean energy efforts. So success in these efforts is reliant on the ability to tap into future leaders. That's going to promote the success of our industry, our communities, our country, and in fact, the world. So this is not something that we take lightly in terms of the importance of efforts like this to develop our up and coming talent. You know, we're at a different time right now where the talent pool is changing pretty rapidly. You've got individuals, baby boomers who are retiring, which promotes the need for us to be very, very engaged in promoting our candidate pipeline of future leaders. So again, it illustrates the importance of efforts like this. Then you have the benefit of the presenters like Alex and Sean, who will provide you with their thoughtful insight on the importance of connection in this virtual environment to ensure that we're not inhibited from maintaining, developing, and promoting the existing connections to successfully creating new ones. So I think you're in for a really enlightening session. And again, it's an honor to be PSE's representative as the company sponsoring this effort. So thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you to Puget Sound Energy for helping us keep and get all of our lights back on, but for also sponsoring this program. That is a really great segue into our next portion. We're going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. So first, we're going to be joined by Alex Alexander. Alex is a founder, soon-to-be author, speaker, and thought leader focusing on community and friendship. Alex is changing the dialogue around community and friendship by breaking down norms, giving people the language to discover the range of relationships in their lives, and giving people actionable tools to cultivate the supportive community they desire. Alex's soon-to-be-released book, Your Community, Your Way, helps people realize that they can impact their friendships more than society has led them to believe. And she will later be joined by Sean Madden, ambassador of fun at Underdog Sports League. Sean is the founder of Underdog, an adult co-rec sports league that provides laid-back leagues for everyday players that are safe, fair, and fun. He is also the founder of League Lab software and the author of The Social Ref, which teaches how to master diffusion techniques to become a better referee and umpire. So I'm going to pass it over to Alex. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hannah, for such a thoughtful introduction. I'm very excited to be joined by Sean here shortly. But first, I want to chat about friendship. Obviously, And I say chat because I really do want to encourage you to send in questions or thoughts that you might have. Sean and I have already had a conversation, and it's good. Like, it's good. We can handle whatever you throw at us tonight. Moving forward, I want to tell you a little bit about my thoughts on friendship, which are a little different than what you see elsewhere. Whenever I read about friendship, I find two things. First, I find generic advice. People say, share vulnerably with your friends, connect regularly. Okay, but how exactly? The second thing I see is a lot of repeating the status quo. Things like women have deeper friendships, whereas men are more activity focused. Sure, that's what the survey results say, but are the results that we really want? At this point, I've talked to a lot of people about friendship, and I'd say that the general consensus is the way that we're approaching friendships could use a little improvement. So if we want the results to be different, we can't keep repeating the same steps, habits, and actions. It's been really interesting to be the person to broach this topic with so many people. When we first start talking about it, I find that people fall into different camps. The first camp are people who just don't think adult friendships are a priority. The next are people that are scared to talk about friendships. Perhaps they're overwhelmed or frustrated, but once I explain that I want to approach friendship in new ways, they can't stop telling me about their friendship struggles. And finally, there are people who have figured out adult friendships to whatever degree that is, and they are blissfully unaware that friendships are a frustration for so many people. Before I started talking about friendship with literally every person, everywhere, all the time, I fell into the final camp. I have a lot of friends that are like family, new friends, high school friends, college friends, work friends, male and female friends. If there's a spectrum of confidence in friendship, I fall into the pretty confident category. But even as a person who feels like I can make and maintain friendships, these last couple years have been really difficult. I'm gonna be honest about that. There have been so many struggles when it comes to friendship. Let's talk about some obvious struggles. The ways that we spend time with friends are likely different now than when the pandemic hit. Being cut off from each other, suddenly shut up in our homes with nothing but our cell phones and our laptops, was rough. But then when we were all stuck at home, a lot of life changes started to happen because why not? Friends moved, had babies, found new careers, met new partners. And it's safe to say that the ways we spent time with friends are now completely different. Re-entry means more phone calls and Zooms because some of our friends have moved away or moved to different jobs. We have to create different traditions because life has changed, and we're figuring out how to spend time together, not only with our friends, but with their new partners in person this time. There are also a lot of less visible struggles, like figuring out how to navigate extreme opposite viewpoints. I'm sure we have all experienced that. Struggling to communicate about pandemic-related boundaries, or maybe just the general state of the world making you feel low and unable to respond to a friend's text message for weeks. I don't know about you, but I spent mornings daydreaming about sitting in a room with friends and late nights wondering, am I gonna have any friends after this? And for good reason. It's been so long since we've been able to talk in person or hug a friend. And just when we were all used to spending Friday nights at home, the world just happened to shift again. We found ourselves on Friday saying, I could see friends tonight, I guess. Do I even have friends still? What do we do together? Most people I've talked to feel like everyone else managed to keep up with their friendships, and somehow they are the only ones that are behind. There's a lot of guilt around the phone calls we didn't make, the outdoor parties we didn't throw, or the texts we never responded to. But I want to tell you that everyone, even those of us who felt confident making and maintaining friendships in the before times, we are all coming out of this with a lot of hurdles to jump over and barriers to break through. There is some good friendship news. Many people have a new appreciation for friendship. It's a level playing field. Everyone's out of practice. And the main point I want to highlight tonight, which is now is the perfect time for a reset. In the before times, people were stuck in their ways. You saw your friends at the same places, probably at the same time, and it was all a part of your routine. Where did that get you? Maybe your friendships centered around late nights or drinking as your main social activity, and now is the perfect time to pick a way to hang out and see your friends in a different way. Did you always feel like the extra invite but never part of the group? Get out there. There are lots of people feeling the same way. Did you feel like you have lots of friends but no one to call on a bad day? Try spending time with friends in new ways that allow for more conversation. Or just simply, you want to make new friends, to which I want to tell you, you are not alone. We're all struggling with friendship in our own ways, and you might be thinking, great, Alex, this has been a lot of general advice, which is exactly what you said you did not like. Don't worry, I'm getting to the action steps. Just need to tell you one more way to think about friendship differently. Making and maintaining friendships is like any other life goal. For example, let's say you want to run a marathon. For the best result, you create a training plan and you lace up your sneakers every day. And I don't mean the best result being a PR, although that's great, congrats. But rather, you want to show up at the start line and feel confident that you'll actually do your best. Now, if you ignore the training plan, you're going to show up to the start line wondering if you will even be able to finish the race. You'll be overjoyed if you do finish it, but that might be overshadowed by the excruciating pain in your right hip. Friendships, just like marathon finishes, are built on habits. They feel good when you show up consistently. So if you've never thought about your friendships this way, well, this is a reset in and of itself. And you might have noticed I keep saying action, 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 action. I haven't really even mentioned emotions much. And let me explain why. When people say, I want deep, meaningful friendships, what they're saying is, I want to trust my friends will show up for me in the ways that I need. And I want them to trust I will also show up for them. So our closest friends, we've developed what I like to call stories about these friendships. And stories are just our beliefs about how we show up for each other. Things like, my friend cares about me, my friend will support me. Maybe even perhaps my friend believes I can do this. These stories, these beliefs about our friendship, they are how we expect our friends to act and how we act to meet our friends' expectations. Notice I didn't say it's how we feel, because the feeling, that warm, fuzzy feeling that makes us feel loved, the one that makes us smile or cry tears of gratitude about how lucky we are to have those friends, we get those feelings when the actions align with our beliefs. If we have the beliefs without the actions, that's where, after a while, depending on how connected you are with your friend, doubt can start to creep in. So that's why I think the actions are where we need to focus our attention on this reset. The time spent together, the activities you do together, the check-ins, the phone calls, even if they're only 5 minutes. Today, I want to give you 4 ways to reframe your friendship habits. Number 1, get clear on what you want. If you ever find yourself saying, I want a group of friends, I would ask you to do what with? If you say, I want friends I can talk about anything with, my question would be, what topics do you feel like you aren't discussing with your current friends? If you say, my childhood friends just don't get me anymore, what parts of your life are you struggling to connect with them about? Just saying, I want some new friends is like walking into a grocery store starving, and don't tell me you don't know what this feeling is. You're totally overwhelmed. You are wandering the aisles aimlessly. Friendships are the same way. You need to narrow things down. Saying, I want new friends leaves you walking into every party, every YPN meeting, or every underdog sports game feeling overwhelmed. Instead, say to yourself, I want some friends I can go to a Seahawks game with, hiking friends, or friends that have similar career goals to me. And this gives you a filter to start narrowing down people when you meet them. Now, pro tip, which you did today in the networking portion, stop asking people, what do you do? Ask them what they do for fun or what they've been dying to try lately. If your interests align, that's a great sign that you might hit it off. What about the friends that you already have, the ones that you don't feel as connected to? Figure out the topics that you wish you spoke about and try broaching those topics. Just like any other relationship, sometimes I think we forget that it's important to mix up your friendships from time to time. And that doesn't have to mean new people. It can just mean new ways you spend time together and new things you talk about. Number 2, get clear on what you bring to the table. Let me give you a couple of personal examples. I love to cook. I will fill a friend's freezer to the brim. I will cook big dinners for 30 people, or I will scramble to figure out how to make dinner just so my friends will hang out for a couple more hours. I've worked really hard to be an exceptional listener. What do you need? Do you need to vent? Do you even want to hear my thoughts? I'm a connector. So I probably know a person who will know the answer to your question if I don't. My husband, he's the energy in the room. If you want people to dance at your party, he will do everything to make it happen. He's also the planner. He'll happily make the invite. Rejection doesn't bother him. He'll plan the get-togethers and he'll suggest things to do. So once you know what you bring to the table, you can offer those skills over and over and over again. Offer them before people ask for them. Be respectful if they decline. They don't have to accept every time. But it's easier to show up for people when you're showing up in ways that you enjoy. You no longer need to be all the things for all the people. Instead, your friends know what your strengths are, which is a win. You won't wonder what you bring to your friends' lives. You are removing the barriers for your friends to ask you for help because they already know without a doubt this is a way that you love to show up. And I want to tell you a story about how this recently happened to me. I have a friend, they're having their second baby, and when they had their first, I did what I already mentioned and I cooked them a bunch of food. This time they live in Reno, which is a little far. We'll go see them after the baby's born, but she texted me the other day asking if I had any freezer meals that I could recommend because they need to pack their own freezer this time. And I was able to send her a list of 50-ish recipes in about 30 minutes. Made it really easy for her to know to ask me because I've already made it clear this is a way I love to show up for them. I'd also suggest asking your friends how they like to show up. You know, it feels nice to show up for your friends, give them the same opportunity. And knowing what you bring to the table helps with reciprocity. No longer is it, I cook for you, you cook for me, but instead it's, I cooked for you, so next time you'll pick the reservation, the time, and the restaurant. Number 3, you can focus on smaller actions. We're looking for consistency here, just like the marathon. That doesn't mean you have to text a friend every day, but you want to connect with them in some way, shape, or form before that guilty phase sets in. A lot of people feel like you need to show up in certain ways. And by that, I mean like big, grand gestures that show your friends just how much they mean to you. You want to show up in the ways that feel good, like throwing an the ways that look good, like throwing an Instagram worthy party. And here's the problem with depending on big, grand gestures. They can be hard to fit in amongst life's other obligations, making them few and far between, which means that you are getting real close to that guilty stage again. Most of these big grand gestures take a lot of time, a lot of money, or a lot of energy, maybe all three, and those are big barriers to get over. You can get really frustrated if you put in all this energy and your friends don't seem to appreciate your gesture as much as you hoped. Which is why I want to encourage you to take smaller action. Smaller action is like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that affirm you and your friends' beliefs about your friendship. I'm not saying no big grand gestures ever, but just put less of a focus on those. To start, make these actions like so freaking easy that it would be hard to not stay consistent. Perhaps texting a friend one time a month. You can do that in 60 seconds on the last day of the month. And once you prove that you can do it, you can increase it to once a week. And the fourth friendship habit and final is get used to initiating, being rejected, and taking imperfect action. We are all just humans, and it can feel easy. It can be easy to feel like we need to show up as the polished version of ourselves, especially when we're making friends. But this also happens with our long-term friends. You might try and suggest a new activity that you and your closest friend can do together, and they say no. Perhaps they say no a few times. We have to remember that unlike dating, where there's a clear end goal, most people don't have goals when it comes to their friendships, except you might after today. But that means that you are working with goals that your friend doesn't have. So sometimes you have to ask someone a few times. You might even have to be more direct and say, hey, I'm trying to find new ways for us to hang out. And if you aren't interested in this one, do you have another idea? And because I don't want anyone to think I'm telling you to accept less than you're worth, if they can't come up with ideas, or they aren't interested in discussing your friendship dynamics, then by all means, direct your friendship energy elsewhere. This is just a reminder that friends can't read our minds, even our oldest friends. It's not about the number of accepted invites. It's about making the invite. Making the invites means that you're showing up for your own friendship goals, just like showing up for that training run consistently for the marathon. And if that friendship goal keeps getting rejected, then start initiating somewhere else. But at least you've built the habit. So I've given you a lot of action. And if you're overwhelmed with where to start, I've got 2 quick ideas, because this is all about momentum. Once you get in the habit, this will become easier over time. Make a list of 5 things you bring to the table and try and offer one to a friend this week. The second is, I know we all joke about best friends being the ones that you can easily cancel plans with, but if I'm being honest, I'm really over this joke. Doing things with friends, spending time together, and connecting is how we make our friendships thrive. And it doesn't have to be go or cancel. Cancel if you want, but consider offering an alternative. Say, hey, I don't feel like going out, but I'd love to see you. Do you want to come over and sit on my patio? Wear your sweats. That's my favorite, personal. Let's hang out, but I have to go to bed by 10 p.m. We do hard things all the time. We move, we switch jobs, we tackle health issues, we decide it's time to go to therapy. We set a boundary, we speak up for that promotion that we want. You do hard things. Little by little, day by day, you get to where you want to go, and friendships aren't any different. Thank you all so much for having me. And now I'm really excited to invite Sean up here to join me. which is lovely because he provides a lot of actions and activities. So he is the perfect counterpart for our discussion tonight. Hi, Sean.
Hello, the perfect counterpart. I want to say, first off, that was great. Second off, I want to re-emphasize to everybody, maybe I'm a bit biased, but the one comment you made, stop asking what people do for work and start asking what people do for fun. Man, that, if you like literally remember one thing from today, and we've seen that with, with corporate events, with, presentations like that, one thing alone is worth its weight in gold. So I just wanted.
Think about how like somebody lights up when you ask them about their passions.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of, if people are struggling with friendships, no one's really taught them, right? Like in middle school and high school, they didn't teach you how to write a check or balance your checkbook. And they certainly didn't teach you how to, deal with friends. And I think a lot of people just say things and do things that they just think are, and I've done it myself, right? Like you're in a new social situation, you're nervous. What do you do for a job? Like, and it's almost like if somebody's having a rough time at work, that probably is going to work a little bit against you if you were hoping on building a friendship for that one.
Yeah, I think people just carry a lot of emotion with their job, right? They like it or they don't like it. It's a status symbol. Maybe they care about it, maybe they don't. And I just like, where do you go from there? Maybe at a networking event, you have a connection, but if it's unlikely you have a connection in a social setting talking about your job, you're much more likely to, I think, connect in an interesting way. When I introduce friends, I do the same thing. I don't introduce friends by their job title. I introduce my friends based on like how I know them or something I know these two people have in common or a passion they both share. I try and, if I can, come up with something that's, an interesting shared topic that doesn't have to do with work. We spend a lot of our life at work. Let's talk about something fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great idea. And I see somebody already was talking about it in the comments as well. And I think you see that even sometimes with workplace functions where kind of the way to, we come across this once in a while. Hey, the managers and the bosses and the coworkers aren't getting along so well. They don't want to show up to the company party. I know you have a big background in parties and events, and they're like, oh, cool, that's interesting. Well, what did you do for the last party? Well, we set up a dunk tank, and the employees took turns throwing a ball at the boss and dunking them in a dunk tank. And it's like, man, I can't imagine why the boss doesn't want to show up to the company parties anymore. And I would imagine a lot of these lines are the same. Hey, I just met this person. The first thing they asked me about is work, and work is stressful and work is tough. I can't imagine why that didn't turn into something bigger. It feels like it's almost predestined to make things more challenging when like the Seattle freeze and the current COVID situation are already challenging enough. You're basically putting a mental blocker right in the way without even realizing it. And because no one's ever really talked to you about it. No one's ever had that presentation you just had.
Well, thank you. But yeah, it's, gosh, Sean, you covered so many things in that one topic. Which direction should we go? We have the Seattle freeze, we have the gatherings.
I'll look to the comments, and if not, I have a question, because I think you touched on it briefly. I think a good question to be is, if you've got, and actually one of the things that I spend a little bit of time on is friendships at work, which is sometimes controversial. And the Gallup poll that asks you, do you have a best friend at work, is a fascinating thing I read a lot about. But I guess since most people are spending so much time on Zoom, and most people are working at these high level companies that have smaller teams where they're maybe shifting. I have a friend at Microsoft who's been at 5 different teams in 5 different years. you know, are there some ideas you have in terms of how to take almost an acquaintance or workplace relationship and take it to the next level? What would you recommend to some people? Because obviously we've got a lot of professionals here. I'm assuming they have a lot of friends at work, and maybe they don't know how to take it beyond, let's go have lunch together, or maybe they can't have lunch together because they're on Zoom now, and that's now off the table.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting about workplace friendships is that like work is the thing that's connecting someone. So if somebody leaves their job, then you've kind of lost your connection point. And if you became good enough friends, like that could still be kind of an acquaintance level where you find yourself saying like, this person is interesting, or I really, you know, care about that person. Then you'll initiate and say, do you want to get lunch? Do you want to get coffee? How are you doing? But if you don't really have any other things to talk about, you know, why would you contact each other? You don't have anything left. Your commonality is gone. So I think that's a great way to be proactive with the people you do enjoy at work, with like talking about other things and honestly trying to do other things. You know, if they're also into a sports league, suggest that you both join, whether that's with a work team or just the two of you. You could go after work. That would be like a very natural transition.
Yeah.
But it would mean that if one of you left your job, you'd still have this place that you're used to hanging out and you're used to talking about, right? You give a reason when your new schedule comes out for your new season to say, hey, do you want to participate this season? So looking at different interests and activities that you can talk about is just more of a reason you feel comfortable reaching out to each other.
Yeah, it also, I mean, the other line that I thought was really great, and I've got a personal affinity to this one. I'll throw it out here and see if I get myself in trouble.
Okay.
But the idea of telling people how you want to show up, and you gave the example of cooking, and it really reminded me of, I mean, I think again of almost a blocking question, almost like a social pressure question, where it's like, hey, what do you do for work? Or if somebody's, for instance, we do, obviously referee and umpire stuff all the time. And I'll watch somebody give a opening day speech of like 10 minutes and they'll pause and they'll say, did anyone not understand anything I just said? Yeah. And like, there's actually more pressure to raise your hand and be like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm dumb. I don't get it. Like it's harder to do that. And I wonder that if when you talk about showing up, the thing I see a lot of is when somebody goes through something hard, which is probably not that uncommon in the last 2 years, and somebody will say something to the effect of, you let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Mm-hmm. And to me, just like asking, what do you do for a living? That's almost like, obviously that's more specialized, but the secondary question of like, man, what a pressure bomb you just dropped on that person. You're going through something difficult, as opposed to saying, I'm great at cooking. When can I drop off these meals for you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you put more work on the person who's struggling.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like they're already probably, right? Let's say they lost a loved one. They're probably, kind of depressed, kind of in their own little bubble world. Like texting anyone is hard, let alone texting someone asking for help. They don't even know what to ask you for. Yes, would you do it? They're already in probably a sad place. So there's a lot of doubt. Like, would they help me? Why would they help me? People have all these things. So I think offering, and it doesn't have to be one option. It could be a couple. You could say, hey, I know that you're having a hard time. I would love to drop off some food. I can just leave it outside. If that doesn't work, I would love, maybe they live down the street. Like, I would love if you just let me know when you went on a walk, if you want somebody to join you. Yeah. Or I'm going to check on you. I'm going to text you on Friday. Please don't feel like you have to respond, but I just want you to know I'm here. Like, offer a few options and take the work away from someone, and do things you really don't mind doing.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
don't dread the ways you show up for people.
No, I think that's a great. I mean, I know I've certainly done it when I just didn't know what to do, and it's almost like, again, one of those go-to lines, like, what do you do for work? Like, hey, let me know if But it just seems like, again, one of those kind of almost friendship blockers, where it's like you're. I guess, and maybe that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, at what point does a friendship, do you kind of almost flip from, I know this person, they're a friend, versus they're a good friend or a great friend or a best friend maybe. And it's like, I don't even need to ask. I just know that you love lasagna, and I'm look outside your door, there'll be lasagna there, versus like, let me know if there's anything I can help. Well, I know what you like to eat. I know what your meals are. I know what's going to cheer you up. Like, how do you think that, how long do you think it maybe takes to almost get to that point is an interesting question.
I personal opinion, right? This is all just
Yeah.
conversation. I think you could be somebody's work acquaintance and drop somebody a lasagna.
Yeah.
Like, if you work with them, they love lasagna or pasta, whatever. They bring it to work all the time. They talk about, I don't know, how their partner makes great whatever, and they love it. Like, just drop it off. It can't hurt. And I think just go with whatever you feel like is present. And I say that because I think one thing that does happen is, actually, the closer friends you have, at some point, we all have our friends, like college friends, let's say, right? Some of my best friends are from college. Some of them don't live near me. They aren't a part of my everyday life anymore. And I do talk to them, like, they know me, but they also kind of know, me over a decade ago.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm the same person, but sometimes I'm not the same person in certain areas. So I think we all have this expectation that we should only ask our closest, oldest friends to help us, but really, like, they may not know the best way to help us. Your coworker may have a better way and be closer and know what you like to eat for lunch recently. So if you are the coworker, just do it if you feel good about it. It doesn't have to be something extreme. It could be really small.
Yeah, and that dovetails exactly into, how do you want me to show up, but also what do you love? And that's kind of, I think, what the some of the highs, lows, bet you didn't knows. We had a situation in our breakout room where it was pretty clear that Sarah loved art, and that took 45 seconds to get there, and not talking about kind of the weather, your profession, where were you born, but talking about what you're passionate about. I think that gets you there a lot faster. I'm going to read this comment real quick from Marcus.
Okay.
Oh, slow pitch softball shout out. Thank you. What are some ideas on how to merge technology with IRL experiences for creating new connections? I don't know if you can see this as well. So I guess Marcus is asking how to merge kind of technology with keeping in touch with in real life. I'm not hip. I don't know what IRL means. I'm sorry.
In real life.
Yes,
real life.
IRL. Yes, I thought it was like a HTTP protocol or something.
Technology. So I guess for example, we played someone games. Oh yeah. Okay, Marcus, I love this question. So this question reminds me, actually, I am a unique wife, I think. I love that my husband plays fantasy football. And let me clarify, I do not like football. I do not like fantasy football. I don't like any of these things. However, what I do love is the amount of connection it gives him and his friends, because they have a Slack channel about their fantasy football leagues, similar to what you're talking about. And it's a great low pressure way for a group of people to just kind of keep like a group chat going and stay connected. similar to what you would do if, you were sitting around a table at a bar. Except that you don't have to have that like barrier of sending everyone the text message saying, do you want to go out this weekend? Like, you don't have to do that and risk the rejection. Instead, you have this consistent meetup, like going to the slow pitch game. Again, not into sports, Sean. This is great. Conversation. I don't even know.
Softball.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you already have that consistency. Like, that's regular, which is great because it takes away that barrier of rejection. It also provides consistency. And by that, I mean, if you don't go one week, you trust that you will see all these people the next week because it's built in, which is great. And then for the in between, you have this ability to like stay connected, kind of chat back and forth, not feel like you're completely starting conversations over because you've been keeping it going. Even if it's not super active all day, it's a great way to just keep the experience going. And people can choose how much to participate.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mention that because as a very poor fantasy football player myself, I have friends on the East Coast, and I've literally made a decision several years ago that the only reason I'm staying in this fantasy football league is because of my co-manager who lives on the East Coast, whose name is Ray. And, I've literally articulated that, like, I would have quit this league a long time ago, but it's literally the go-to kind of social glue, if you will, where it's like, it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm texting and I'm like, should we pick up this, Jalen, should we pick up Jalen Waddle? There you go. There's an important question for everyone to contemplate from the Miami Dolphins. But it is social glue. And you use that word again, pressure, right? Like the idea of having a shared activity or a shared goal, which is basically what Underdog is, right? It actually is why people thankfully have gravitated towards us over the years, because it does take the pressure off of, these moments in the same way of, the job question, in the same way of, anybody confused by what I just said, in the same way of, let me know if anything I do to help. The idea of kind of creating some, you talked about smaller actions.
Yep.
Is there ever a smaller action than, should I pick up this player? Should I make this trade? What should my team name be? All those kind of small actions that you referenced as, instead of trying to do this big grandiose, I'm going to throw a party for 50, 100 people. I'm going to throw my 50th, 40th birthday bash, versus like, I'm going to join this league. I'm going to join this fantasy football league and have smaller actions, but also micro communications, which is basically what fantasy football is, before you get to the trash talking, which is also a different form of micro communications, but that's basically what it is.
Yeah. It keeps you away from that guilt stage. And the other thing I mean, we keep talking about fantasy football here, but like the other thing I love about that is, the more we're all interacting with our friends, instead of feeling like we need to get together, get dinner, and catch up on all of the main events of our life, and, with our closest friends, like it can be emotionally a lot to sit down at dinner and just really dive into all the things. And if you are staying connected in these small ways, it's easier to slip in, just like how are you doing? And maybe you get the sense that they're not doing good, and that creates the opportunity for you to check in on them and things like that. But, doing the things together alleviates that pressure of having to have these big catch-up sessions.
Right. Or maybe even the question of just like, I mean, again, like, how are you doing?
Yep.
And how many times do you ask that question and somebody genuinely says, man, I am doing crappy right now. I am like, I can't think of one even when people are actually in the last 2 years legitimately doing crappy, myself in some cases probably included, but like, like how you doing? Good. How about you? Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then where have we gotten?
Yeah. I want to circle back because Hannah sent me a question, like we have an anonymous question.
Okay.
And the question is, was sent around the time that we were talking about like the lasagna and the coworker and things like that. The question is, how do you avoid crossing the line into clingy?
Great question. Sorry, I have to scroll through Andy's pitch here to get to that question. I must have missed it.
I don't know if, well, maybe Hannah sent it to you. I don't know if she
Oh,
sent
yeah.
it to you or to me. It's just a secret. It's a secret question, Sean.
And it's an excellent question.
So, I mean, I'd love to hear your answer because the whole hope, right, is we share, maybe we have differing opinions. My feeling on being clingy, like you can definitely come on too strong to someone. And my thought is that has more to share with like self-disclosing a lot too soon, which is where all those small actions come in because you just slowly build up a rapport with someone. But clingy, I mean, I think just doing nice things for people. If somebody thinks you're clingy for dropping off a lasagna, really, like you're just trying to be helpful, you know?
I would the thing that I actually talk a lot about, and the fun cocktail parties are a thing anymore. The fun cocktail party phrase, which is getting very popular in the last few years, which I talked about in some writings I did, is called Hanlon's razor, Hanlons, Hanlon's razor, which you can look up on Wikipedia for fun. I think when it comes to friendships and company friendships, the idea that don't assign malice to that which can be easily described, associated with neglect. Basically, don't assume the worst when somebody just made a mistake. And I think if you're talking about clingy, the way to be clingy is to focus more on how long it's been since you got back to me, or kind of like grandma, like, why haven't you called me? Like, it's been 2 weeks since you called. You never, my grandma, we're on the phone right now. Like, no, yeah, but why did you never call? That's my grandma impression. But like focusing on the mechanics of the friendship, focusing on, I sent you 5 texts and you sent me 1, which I do sometimes. Like, why haven't you gotten back to me? How long you gotten back to me? And then of course, when the 2 or 3 times when I've actually like pushed that issue, there's always something like, man, my kid is having a huge problem. And you're like, wow, I'm the biggest jerk in the world. So here I am worried about the speed at which a friend got back to me. And I don't know that it's not, it's just something is going on, or they made a mistake, or their phone they lost their charger for their phone. Like, how many times are you like supposed to meet up with somebody, at least back in the old days? And, it's like the person ghosted me, the person didn't get back to me. It's like, how could you do this to me? It's like, I literally lost my charger, my phone died, I'm super sorry. But in your mind, this person, did I do something wrong? Does this person hate me? I think when I talk about the clingy, that's what I would describe. I'm focusing on the speed, the mechanics of the friendship, as opposed to like what you bring to the friendship.
Marcus wrote, I think empathy solves clinginess. Understanding the other person's perspective will always help you understand their boundaries.
Yeah.
And I mean, to add on to that, Marcus, I think, we have, like Tira said, in addition to clingy, demanding / invasive. Which I think goes back to, right, just not having assumptions and being direct. If you feel like someone's being demanding, just say, hey, like, I am not available to text back that often. They'll either accept that boundary or they won't. And if they won't, then like maybe they're not the right person for you. I like to think a lot about just like trusting that I can make the friends I need. And if somebody else is not the right friend for me, that they can also make the friends they need. And like if we can't figure it out, then that's okay. That's okay.
And I think you alluded to this when you talked about how do you want to show up. Like the fantasy football friend Ray from the East Coast is very clear. He's like, I hate talking on the phone, and like we know this. And when he picks up the phone, he says, man, this is a rare occurrence. You're lucky that I'm talking on the phone with you right now. And I know, there's no doubt that I know that like, if I call him, there's like a 90% chance he's not going to pick up the phone. Right. And being clear about that, I think is actually funny and good, as opposed to like, man, this person never picks up the phone when I call. They suck as a friend.
Yeah. I, in my in my new workbook, I have a whole section on that, figuring out, I talked today about the actions you like to do, but in the workbook, I talk about, do you like one-on-one get-togethers, group get-togethers? Do you like to talk on the phone? Do you like to text? Can you, are you a parent with a young kid and you have to be really clear that, it's nice that you want to hang out when we're with my kid, but I can only give you half my attention. Like just being really upfront and hoping that your friends can adapt and accept those are.
I think Liz has an excellent one for you in the comments. Do you have recommendations for friends that have a really hard time scheduling things? My girlfriends and I have to schedule a brunch around their photography jobs, which is difficult to find a time that works for everyone. And then they tend to cancel last minute. And we have to start all over again, trying to find a time we can all meet. How do I set a boundary that we will need to pick a time and stick with it rather than rescheduling a million times? I truncated the comment, but
Okay, I do have suggestions. Are you ready? Number one, download Doodle. I know that sounds silly. My friends and I do this. We use Doodle. So the person that initiates creates a Doodle poll with a bunch of ideas and options. Everybody votes, and whatever the winner is, that's the time. There's no hurt feelings that one person can't make it at that time. Like that's just what it is. That's one idea. Number two would be that instead of continually finding times that work for everyone, set up a reoccurring time. So whatever the right interval is, whether that's once a month, once a quarter, twice a year, every other week, I don't know. But pick a time. So if it's Saturday at 9 a.m., like the first Saturday at 9 a.m. every other month, one time everybody has to have that conversation, and then that's it. That's when it happens, unless you guys reschedule it. But it removes all, like that's a lot of labor. It's a lot of work to be the people, like the person that's trying to coordinate everybody's schedules. So just get rid of it. Remove the work. Do it one time, and that's it. And if you can't make it, then you can make it to the next one. You, like as the attendee, the friends, everybody's responsible for knowing that time, planning around it, setting it as a priority, and making it work. Those are my two suggestions.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the people in attendance have been a part of kind of any of the other groups. I don't know if I'm allowed to say them out loud, like EO, for example, or YPO or something like that. But, but obviously both those groups have very strict, ideas in terms of forums and meetups, and they all, in my experience, all use Doodle. And it's like the idea of like, I'm really busy. It's like, guess what? Everyone in this group's really busy. So like pick a time, and if you can't make it, then you're missing out, as opposed to I can't make it, so we have to keep going back and rescheduling over and over again. And that's the one time I actually first started using Doodle, was in those kind of, entrepreneurial forums, and it works pretty good. And then of course also you could make it even meaner and say, if you miss, then you have to pay for lunch next time, but that might not work as well with your friends as it does with the entrepreneur groups that I'm a member of. But yes, anyway.
I guess one final thing would be like, if one person just can't keep making it, then let them just not make it. And keep it going, because like they have to make a decision and figure out how to be there. And or they can suggest an alternative. Maybe it's something different, maybe also let them suggest an alternative. You don't need to show all that work. I have another question from Hannah, and I think this one's great for you, Sean.
Okay, I want one quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Because of course I compare everything in my life to sports leagues, but for the first 2 years we started Underdog, we would get phone calls, and I was an entrepreneur, so I get the phone calls on my cell phone, and people be like, "Are you on your cell phone?" I'd be like, "No, I just yeah." But the number one phone call we got for 2 years was not, what are the rules or how much does this cost? The number one phone call we got was, how many other people are signed up for this league?
Yeah.
Because when we first started, people didn't have the confidence, and they're like, is anyone else doing this? And so when you say kind of, if one person keeps missing, do it without them, I believe you mentioned this before, the idea of momentum. Like there's something you said about momentum. If you're having trouble, scheduling a brunch with your friends, people are people, and FOMO is a real thing. And if you say, hey, we had 2-3 brunches and you missed out, I would probably bet you $10 that that person will all of a sudden find time on their calendar next time, as opposed to, constantly not being able to schedule it, whether it's a sports league or a brunch. There's something to be said about momentum and just running the league. And we would say, there's plenty of people signed up. There's only a few spots left. You might miss out. Like that was just a fascinating look into how people viewed our league when we first started. That the number one question was, who else is doing this?
Yeah.
Not I want to do this, but who else is doing this? And I would bet that that's a similar situation if you're having problems with momentum, with doing consistent social, gatherings. Sorry, I jumped in there, but go
You're
ahead.
good.
Now we're.
I think Hannah's going to tell us we have to stop soon, but I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Here's the question. What are your thoughts on the concept of connection with purpose, right? Connecting with purpose, given the constraints and challenges of a virtual environment. So like, now that we're virtual, connecting with purpose.
I think it all comes down to the same ideas we've talked about. If my best friend Ray, who I've alluded to now 3 times, so I have to send him this recording. The first time I met him, he thought I was the world's biggest jerk he'd ever met in his life. And the funny part is when I bring this up, when I talk about, in settings, I ask a question: how many people have a best friend? Okay, keep your hand up. How many people, the best friend you met, the first time you met them, you thought they were the biggest jerk in the world? So there's something going on. Like there's something going on there, right? Like there's some science or human nature or something's going on there for it to happen that much. And Abe Lincoln has a famous quote, like, "I do not like that man. I must get to know him better." And so, I think that putting aside the pandemic and the technology, like, I think you have to give it a chance. And the more you kind of clutter things up with, how about this weather we've been having? What do you do for work? And the more you kind of, again, don't rush it, because you can do it both ways, right? You can try and rush to vulnerability, which I think you mentioned, and you can talk about the sad story about your dog passing away, and you can go too far too fast. And I think that nowadays, I don't know if people can take any more sad stories, the highs and the lows, but you know, just get the lows out. We don't need that for the last 2 years. But I think that despite Zoom or despite it all comes down to simple stuff. And if it's going to happen, it's meant to happen. But it's not going to happen because you have a joke or you have a sports team in common. That stuff is almost ancillary. And my best friends, we actually hate each other's sports teams, but there's something else there. And it happened naturally over time. And I would just say, give yourself a chance by taking away the pressure, of if you have a gathering and hey, you two sit here and get to know each other. Like, I can't imagine a more pressure-filled statement than like putting somebody in a Zoom room and say, okay, you two hang out here, get to know each other, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. And that's why we tried that exercise we did today, versus tell us something we wouldn't know. And you could say they're icebreakers, you could say they're whatever they are. But at a certain point, there is some science to friendship. And there's some science to, like, if they're meant to be a best friend, it's gonna happen if you just don't do the stuff that's gonna screw it up from happening, whether there's Zoom or Teams or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about how we made friends as kids. Like when we were really little, like when we met some of our first friends, or even in college, right? You just met friends because you were in the same place and you did things together. You did whatever. You ran errands, you went to the grocery store, you did the monkey bars when you were 7. Like, you just did things. Which is why I think having activities when you're virtual, especially if you don't know people, but even if they are your close friends, I think having activities is great, because what you're saying, it lessens that pressure of needing to have this intense connection. And as far as making friends, I think we romanticize, like you're just going to meet someone and it's going to be an instant connection. And I tell people all the time, like, get rid of that pressure. Like, get rid of it. The reason we like our best friends, I think, is because we've spent so much time with them that those weird quirks start to become endearing. Because they're so unique that they do that thing and we smile. They rib on that sports team, our sports team, and we laugh because we know it's good nature. And you're not gonna do that initially. It's just like slowly chipping away layers. And in order to chip away the layers, you got to spend time together. You got to do things together. You got to be around each other.
Yeah, and as a quick aside, we're doing a lot of virtual corporate events now, and it is shocking how many, like the dunk tank story, how many companies are going, to Zoom or Teams or et cetera, and taking bad ideas and just moving them straight to Zoom. And they'll say, okay, well, we're doing a trivia party, but can you have we're going to have 40 people at this party, and can you have everybody meet in the main room for 10 minutes before the event starts? As if like just having everybody in the same Zoom room is just gonna it's like almost like the old days where it's like, here's 2 drink tickets, enjoy the party. And that's just gonna make things work. And I'm literally like, no, like, don't do that. There's like science behind that. There's like ideas behind it, but like having people like, oh, wait, unmute yourself, and there's like 39 other people in the room. I can't think of a worse way to like actually make friends. But you saw an example, if you have to do an online virtual event, you saw an example of when we started, what a different way to do it. And groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 4, it's just, there's like science behind this. It's not like, it's not a guess, but these companies still think, well, if I just get everyone in the same spot, whether it's a fancy dance club with 2 drink tickets, or I just get them all in the same Zoom room, people will just have fun and have conversations and make friends. And yeah, they will, but they'll have guarded conversations like, how was your weekend? And how is your department going? And things like that. And then you'll end up where you always are.
And you'll zone out.
Yeah.
Can't forget you and talk to that person. We want to be memorable, ask important questions. Okay, I have one more anonymous question. Hannah's got 5 more minutes, and I'm going to be really quick with this one, which is unfortunate because it's a great question. But it says, how do you think social media has affected friendships and how they are perceived? And
it's a stem winder.
So I said we could talk a whole meeting on this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my quick statement here. I think, oh gosh, how can I make this quick? Okay, here we go. 1, we are watching other people's lives. We are not experiencing them with them. And with friends, like with actual people, it is so much better for your friendships if you actually interact on social media, like their photos, comment, message them, text them and say you saw that thing. Great, like interact so you get rid of that weird next time you're together. And I think the other thing that I'm going to say fast, and if you are somebody that asked this question and you want to talk about it, send me a message. But I think the other problem is people feel like they have friends they don't have. And that has to do with like the influencer situation. If you are watching someone and you know everything about their life and they know nothing about you, you are not community. They can call these people that follow them their community all day long, but this is a one-sided relationship and you need to be heard too. And that's just the harsh reality I'm going to put on that.
Yeah, I would just preach on. I say often social media is not very social. And
Yeah.
I just kind of leave it at that. I don't actually do it very often. And my wife gets extremely frustrated with me because she's like, didn't you see? And I'm like, nope, I didn't. I don't. And it's fascinating also for me to watch the different kind of like, Facebook is kind of like for like, what you had for dinner, and Instagram's kind of like your feet up at the beach. But LinkedIn is almost like the extremely proud and so grateful to pat myself on the back. And it's funny to watch all the the social networks kind of go. But at the end of the day, it's not I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that most of these networks are designed intentionally to get you to engage. And oftentimes it's either a cute puppy or something really bad that you're engaging on. It's not normal social friendship engagement most of the time.
They're designed to get you to engage on the platform.
Right.
They want to keep you on the platform. What I want you to do is talk to someone in a way that will maybe mean you can get off the platform.
Oh yeah, no, and
together in a different way. And if you don't initiate with the people you actually know, like with your real friends, not just like the social media personalities, like
and
use that as a tool, be intentional.
Yeah, but it's going in the wrong direction, right? When you hear the word metaverse, which is a fancy way of saying my daughter's addicted to Roblox, that metaverse is going in the wrong direction for friendships.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Marcus, this is a great way to end. If we could each give one piece of info that we want to leave people with this evening, what would it be?
Shall I start and you can have the grand finale?
Sure.
I mean, I would say think about that idea of social pressure, and if possible, the one of the simplest things I talk a lot about is think about the idea of being face to face versus shoulder to shoulder. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, why people like underdogs is because they're shoulder to shoulder. When you go to watch a baseball game, you're shoulder to shoulder. If that idea of being face to face, while it seems like that's the way you should be, that's hard. That's more pressure. If that idea seems crazy, like next time you walk into an elevator, don't turn around and watch how incredibly uncomfortable everybody else in the elevator comes, because there's a social contract that says you walk in the elevator and you turn around because everyone's shoulder to shoulder and everyone's facing the door. So if you don't believe that, walk in an elevator next time and just face forward and don't turn around, and watch how incredibly uncomfortable everybody else becomes in like 4 to 5 seconds. And that's because there's a science behind this, and whether it's a party or a corporate event or make sure you're finding situations where you're interacting shoulder to shoulder versus face to face, because a topic we didn't spend a ton of time on, but everyone is really rusty coming out of COVID. Yeah. And the more pressure you put on, and the more face to face, and the more either 40-person groups or 2-person groups you put out there, the harder it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. That's a great challenge, Sean. I love a challenge. We also know I'm obsessed with friendship. I'm now going to try that. I'm going to try that a bunch. I'm going to message you and tell you how it goes.
Yeah, except that they're limited.
Looking awkward in public. Yeah. My piece of advice that I closed it out with is that just like anything we do, you got to start somewhere, and the only way to do it is just to do it. And you can read a ton of books and you can listen to a ton of people, but the best way we all learn is just by trying. And if it's not going well, then I would say start talking to people, to other people you are friends with. Message me, just start talking and asking questions and trying to discuss this more. We need to talk about this more. That's it. Do it and talk about it more.
Awesome. Yeah, I took so many notes listening. I had a really good time, just so who all of you know, getting to know Alex and Sean and just being so interested in what they have to say about friendship. I think it's such an interesting topic and one that's really important to our personal development. So join me in giving a virtual round of applause and a big thank you to Alex and Sean for taking the time this evening. We are just going to finish up here with a couple of upcoming events. We're headed into that kind of quiet time here at the chamber. So we have our all chamber after hours. If you want to test out some of these friendship making skills at another upcoming event, that'll be next Wednesday. And then our next YPN will be in January. So we'll see you all after the new year, shifting gears into professional development. So stay tuned for more details on that. And with that, we are done. So again, just wanted to say thank you to Alex and Sean for taking the time. Thank you to Tracy and the folks at Puget Sound Energy for sponsoring this program. And finally, thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your afternoon to join us. We hope to see you again soon. So have a great rest of your evening. And we'll see
If
you
I
at the
could
next
just
event.
close in saying, thank you, Alex and Sean, very, very much. So privileged to have sponsored this great developmental event. And Chamber, we look forward to your continued partnership with us.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe.